Sit tight.
So to get started building this massive hull tree project, we're out here in the garage where we're going to break down all of our wood. Now we are using 3 sheets of 3/4 inch sanded on both sides paint grade plywood, as well as 2 sheets of 1/4 inch hardboard, which will make up the back later in the project. Now I have my cut list here, which you can download for free on my website, DIYbuilds.ca, as well as all my other projects, should you want to build any of those. Now let's get started with our cutting stuff up montage, and we'll meet you back here. Now that we have basically everything cut out, the next thing I want to do is add the handles to our drawer fronts. These are going to be simple trapezoid cutouts on the top of each drawer. And I'm just going to cut these out first on the table saw to do the angled cuts, then over at the bandsaw cut out the majority and just finish it off with a strip sander to make it nice and smooth. Now, if you wanted, of course, you could make a template, glue it to this, and then take it to the router table and do all that, but I don't really want to, so let's just do this. Now it's onto these 2 main upright pieces, which I need to cut a curve out of the bottom and top and connect it with a straight line in the middle. To do that, I'm going to first mark everything out according to my plans using my little homemade compass here. And then I'm going to use the table saw to cut the straight and a jigsaw for the curves, and we'll just refine everything with the sander. With all of our pieces cut out, it's time to move on to our favorite task, iron-on edge banding. You see I've got a piece cut right here. This is going to be the curved section that goes along this are very of the trickiest pieces. I'm not going to bother showing you all the flat pieces that I need to add edge banding to, as that's rather simple. So to accomplish this, I've got a piece that's about 2 inches long in either direction. We're going to start in the middle, iron our flat section, and then when we get to the corners, I've got this, the cutoff piece, and we're going to kind of use that to mash it in as we heat it up and press it into the corner. That's going to give us a nice bond. After that, we come back, trim the excess with a sharp chisel or a knife, give it a little bit of a sanding, and move on. All right, now that we've completed our lifetime worth of edge banding plywood, we can move on to the drawers. Now, our first step is going to be adding a rabbet to the inside of all of these pieces, the fronts, backs, and sides, for our 1/4 inch hardboard. This is going to be the bottom of our drawers. Now, it's going to be recessed in so you don't see it. It's a lot prettier that way. Now, we're going to do this at the table saw using my full girth flat tooth blade with 2 passes and my little spacer block. You can use a router, but I find that it leaves a lot more chip out on this type of plywood in particular. So we're over here at my homemade pocket hole machine. If you want to build one of these or see more about it, I have an entire playlist dedicated to this machine. But next we're going to drill all of our pocket holes for our drawers, and I've mocked it up this way to display where we're going to put them. We're going to put 3 right here connecting our fronts, And then on the back, we're going to have 3 on each side. So the only place you'll really see the holes is right here, and we'll probably plug that with some drywall compound as this is going to be painted anyways. So the best way I've found to assemble these drawers is to install everything upside down so the top is nice and flush against our work surface. And then I've created a spacer right here, which is the same as this back piece. We're going to put right there so these side pieces can't suck in when the pocket screws go in. And again, everything is going to be clamped in place so the pocket screws don't move things around on us. These are just going to be screwed together, not glued. We will, however, nail and glue on the bottom panel. With the drawers fully assembled, I can now get accurate dimensions in the length and width for our bottom panel, which again, we're going to cut out of our 1/4" hardboard material. And our drawer has no bottom. So we're going to put a bead of glue around the outside. Then we're going to use 1/2" crown staples and staple it on every few inches. You ready to help me?
Yeah.
Okay. Who's going to glue?
Me.
Okay. Well, Vale will glue 1/2, then Theo will glue 1/2. This is what I want you to do. Squeeze it a little bit. And just a little bit around the outside. We want the glue squeezing into the inside. Okay, perfect. Who is going to drop this into place?
Me.
Okay. Yeah, just like that.
Perfect.
You need Dad's help. You might be able to do it after I show you. So you're going to line up this edge right there, and the staple's going to shoot out the front. So watch Dad do it. Okay, go. You got it. Squeeze. Yeah. Squeeze. Yep. We're shooting the staples into this piece of wood, right? So you got to be within that. Okay? Okay.
It's hard, Dad.
I know. Do you want to do the last one, Vale?
Yeah.
Okay. Is our bottom on?
No.
I don't know. It seems like it's on. And what do we have inside?
A bottom.
Too much glue.
Yeah.
We're going to wipe it out. So our drawers are almost ready. The last thing to do is just plug these pocket holes, and I'm just going to use some drywall compound. It's going to take a couple coats because this is such a deep hole. If you wanted, you could plug these with a dowel and cut them flush and sand them, but drywall compound's pretty easy and it'll look just fine once it's painted. We're almost ready to start assembling our bench unit, but there's a few things we have to do first. Because of our 1/4" hardboard back piece, we're going to have to add a rabbet to the 2 outside pieces. These are our 6 vertical pieces that make up the lower bench. Then we're going to add all of our pocket holes to the top sections, which will connect to the underside of the bench. And then we'll add pocket holes as well to all the horizontal pieces that go just under the drawers. So here we've got our bench top, and you'll notice the exposed plywood edges. Now we're going to add edge banding, but I'm going to be using 1/4" thick real maple edge banding, and that's because I'm going to be adding a rounded profile to the outside edges, so it doesn't really dig into your butt with that 90-degree corner when you're sitting on it. Now that I've added that rabbet I forgot to install earlier for our 1/4" hardboard backer piece, we can go ahead and add a 1/4" round over to the top of this bench piece. So as I've said before, this project is going to be painted except for one thing. The bench top where you sit is going to be stained with this dark chocolate, and 4 coats of polyurethane will be put on top with light sanding in between. We're going to do that ahead of time before we get done with the assembly, as it's just going to make everything a lot simpler when it comes time to paint. So we're finally ready to begin assembly of the lower section, i.e. the bench area. You see we've got our stain and our finish all done, and this is laying face down on a towel so we don't wreck that finish. And I've also got some spacer blocks underneath. That's because we're going to need these clamps to hold our vertical pieces in place. As we're using pocket screws, we don't want things to shift around as we're driving in those screws. Now to do that, we're just using our drill with our clutch setting. This is on a setting of 12, so as soon as it goes, it stops. You don't over torque these and strip out the screw. So I'm going to be starting from left to right, and I'm not going to be using a square. I'm actually going to be using these pieces right here to make sure that our spacing is perfect. These are the pieces that are going to sit about 5 or 6 inches up where the drawer is going to fit in. This is going to make sure that our drawers fit perfectly and everything stays nice and aligned as we move down. We should end up with a 1/4 inch overhang on both ends. Let's get to it. So I've got my soft close drawer slides here disassembled. We've got that piece on the inside and then this piece which is going to mount to our uprights. And I've got my spacer block here. This is just to set it off the top bench. And it's got a little hook on the back to positively register it there. And then a little hook on the front so we can slide our drawer slide right in place and then just drive in all the screws. Again, we'll use the drill, not an impact. And we don't need to pre-drill these as this is plywood. Just drive them right in. Take this piece, put it in the corner. Now we're going to put a screw in. Perfect, mister. You want to do some more?
Yes.
Okay, go. Perfect. You got it. All right. High five. Good job. Like a little builder. So in order to mount these drawers, we need to first lay down our 1/8 inch spacer block on either side, and then we need to pull out each one of these full extension drawer slides so we expose our first screw, drop the drawer into place, and we need to press the metal right up against our shoulder here, again leaving these screws exposed. Then we'll just drive in our screws, pull it out a little bit, drive in the rest of the screws. We'll probably have to pull this all the way out to get to the back screws, but simple as that. So now to install this lower piece that goes below the drawer and really gives this whole thing a lot more structure, we're going to lay down our spacers again, 1/8 inch thick, and then just slap this on top. We'll put a clamp in there, and then we'll drive in our pocket screws. Do that for the other 4, and we're good to go. So now that this thing's fully assembled, we can get our final measurements on this inside rabbet here for our 1/4 inch hardboard backer. We'll glue that on and we'll keep it securely in place with some 1/2 inch crown staples. With the base fully assembled, we can move on to our top hutch section. Now this is going to be the top right here. The pocket screws are facing up, and we've got our little ladder work in the middle. I've got this bottom shelf here used as spacers so we can precisely place our vertical pieces. We're going to keep them in place with our 1.5 me nails, come back with a bunch of 2-inch screws. Yes, that's going to leave a hole, but that'll all get spackled before we paint later. So now to install this piece, which separates our cupboard from our lower shelf, we're just going to use our spacer here, press it up against it, clamp it on the top, and then drive in all of our pocket screws and move on down the line. So now it's on to attaching the two uprights on either side. I've got this piece of wood which extends past my bench since my bench is not big enough for this. And this will support the back rabbeted edge, which is coplanar with the back side here, making room for that 1/4 inch hardboard backer. So I'm just going to lay this on here, throw a clamp on, make sure we're nice and flush, everything's lined up, and we're going to drive in all the pocket screws here, here, and here. But before we install the pocket screws on this middle piece, I'll put my spacer back in just in case the plywood is warped in any way. And now we'll spin it around and do the same thing to the other side. So I've now got the upper hutch on the ground, as it's the only real place I can work on this now, and it is upside down. That's going to make it easier for this next step. We're going to install our 3 stretchers between our 2 uprights. You see I've already got one clamped in place. It's got a spacer right here of 3.5 inches. That's because when you go to throw your coat on the hook, it needs a little room to get over the hook. These stretchers are going to be holding our hooks right here, one in the middle for backpacks and one at the bottom just to support the whole bench area so things don't move around. So now we're ready to install the 1/4 inch hardboard backing. It actually has to be 2 sheets, seeing as they come in 4x8 sheets, and this is about 6 foot squared. We're gonna have a larger section here and a smaller section here. That way the seam lands on this nice wide board. There's gonna be lots of glue coverage on both sides. We're gonna be attaching this with glue everywhere and some 1/2 inch crown staples. Now, one thing I had to go ahead and do was install a support stick there and a couple there, just to make sure that none of this sags, as when it's glued in place, we don't want there to be a big pimple on the wall that's constantly bowing in. The last thing I want to do to this back trellis work is I want to install these little blocks right here to kind of complete the look. Now I've measured and marked and cut them to the exact size, and I'm just going to use my square to line them up. And then we're going to put some glue on the back, come in from the back side with a few me-nails, and then one screw in the middle just to really suck it into the back panel here so we have good glue adhesion. The last thing to do before we put on our first coat of primer is we're just going to fill in all of our screw holes that will be shown with some drywall compound. So you can see I just marked the location for our 10 hinges. These are the doors that are going in the uppers. These are Euro style hinges that are set into the face frame, as that's the look we're going for, and they're soft close. Now I've just marked the location, and we'll drill with a self-centering drill bit these 2 mounting screws after we go ahead and drill the 1 3/8 or 35mm hole. It's basically just drilled to the depth of the thickness of the Forstner bit. So let's do that at the drill press. So to mount this side of the door hinge, I've marked our center line on both sides, and I have this little spacer block right here. And I'm just going to place it up against, line up my oval shapes, circle them with a pencil, and then we're going to use the drill to drill out those holes, and then mount this and make sure everything works the way we think it will. So So I've got this board set here. That's just because I want to be able to open this because we don't have any door handles on here right now. So we'll just clip it in and see how it works, make adjustments as necessary. Awesome. We'll do the rest of them. So last thing we need to do is mark out and drill the holes for our pole right here. Now the spacing is 3 inches between them. This is 13 1/4. So we'll do 5 1/8 from each side. I'm just going to mark the side of it and the top of it, as we're going to have a 1 inch offset from this edge anyways. And then we'll use the awl to create a little divot and drill out the hole. So you can see everything's got a coat of primer. I've gone ahead and sanded everything lightly and blown off all the dust, so we're ready for paint. We're going to do 2 coats with a brush and roller. As it's really cold outside, I don't have the option to spray. If I could, absolutely, I would spray this, as it'll probably leave a better finish and be a lot faster. Anyways, let's get to it. Now that our second coat of paint is fully cured, we can go ahead and reinstall our drawer slide hardware. So the last thing to do before we bring this bottom section inside and permanently install it is to install these black little silicone rubber feet right here. This is going to give us a little bit of a spacing so the plywood isn't direct contact with the floor, as there could be puddles from boots melting off snow or what have you, and we don't want the water absorbing into the plywood and wrecking it. So I'm just going to put a whole bunch of these on each one of these 3/4 inch plywood sections. Then I'll space it about a 1/16 of an inch off the floor. So I may have forgotten that this top piece right here on the back side has pocket screws to attach itself to the top of the bench here. So that means I had to take out my screws, and we now need to slide this out, attach those pocket screws, slide everything back, and then we can attach the side pocket screws and then anchor it into the top, into the studs. Yeah. So I was just about to start installing the doors when I realized I missed a step. We need to install this little stopper, otherwise the door is going to go past 90 degrees. So I made up this little jig, which is the thickness of the door. I'm going to place it here, place our little stopper, and then I'm just going to nail it in place with a couple me nails. Simple as that. And we'll get all our doors installed.
Did you know that the oldest person alive is 22? 122.